Welcome back to another episode of Timebreaker Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel.
And I'm Anthony.
And today we're talking about Venom and Venom There Be Carnage, which just came out. We're going to start the episode off talking about the first Venom, going into our thoughts about it. And then we're going to give some brief thoughts about Venom 2. And then we'll probably do the spoiler warning right there. And then we'll talk about spoilers since the movie has been around for the weekend and had a good weekend at that. But let's jump off with the first Venom. What did you think of it?
Its second half is so much better than its first half. Like, the second half was almost good enough to forgive how absolutely boring the first section of it was. I just did not care for the plot that they were trying to go through, and I even bought it in 4K and tried rewatching, and the first half is just still just so meh. And when you watch it at home, you get to actually see the runtime, and Venom shows up around, 50 minutes into the first one, and from there, he's only in it for 30 minutes. So the things I liked about Venom actually wasn't very much of the film at all.
Yeah, for me, I think, like you said, it takes a while for him to get Venom, and I think that's, to me, where I start, kind of enjoying the movie. When he gets the symbiote, when he starts feeling the effects, when they start having that dialogue, because they have this, they've created this sort of, buddy cop thing, where it's Venom and Eddie inside each other's heads, and just the banter they got going on just made it for such an enjoyable film. And leading up to that point, yes, we're getting the backstory of Eddie Brock, and we're setting up the villain and all this stuff, but it just felt like a kind of jumbled on mess that just kept going on and wasn't really going anywhere. And I will say, both of these films have pacing issues, and I really would like to see them, really iron out a good pacing for, the third one, if that happens. The first one, I feel really starts off really slow, but once we get Venom, even if we're not seeing Venom, I just like having, Venom and Eddie have that dialogue internally, so once, he makes contact with Venom is when I, actually start enjoying the film.
Yeah, I would say my thoughts are the same on that, is that, the first half is, I think it's the story they're trying to tell. I didn't really like what they were trying to do, and I think that just made it so I didn't really, invest myself into it. But you're right, when Venom, even when he wasn't physically there, but when, his voice started showing up, I mean, the movie, took a drastic shift, and I remember walking out in 2018 and going, you know what? The second half was not half bad. But, it ended up making a ton of money. I mean, it made over $800 million worldwide. I mean, it was insane. And the movie was just trashed, absolutely trashed upon by critics. So I was really shocked to see it make that type of money with that poor reception.
Yeah, there was this huge, movement and, kind of talk about how the movie wasn't that good, and the critics were saying it's really bad. And then Sony, for that movie, and I'm pretty sure this movie, they held the release embargo till only a couple days before the film comes out, and that's usually not a good sign that the studio has a lot of faith in their film. And so we didn't see that score till really late, and then it finally comes out, it's really low. And Venom hasn't had a great track record up on the film up until that point. We had him in Spider-Man 3, so that was a really bad iteration of Venom. And so we didn't really know what to expect. Yes, he was bigger and badder, but it was also attached to that PG13 rating. So we really didn't know what to expect. And after seeing that first half of the movie and just kind of going through, it's a good film up until once it hits a certain point, but definitely really surprised me how it made that much money.
Yeah, especially at the time, this was pre-Joker, so it was kind of odd to see an October movie make that type of money. I mean, I think The Martian made, I don't know, 600 million. So to see something make that type of money in October was really an eye-opener for both audiences and studios, because typically you didn't get major tent poles in October. And then Joker came out the following October and just absolutely smashed that record.
Yeah, definitely. And going back to the film, to Venom himself, what do you think about this new take on Venom the character, versus Spider-Man 3, or just what do you think of this actual version of him?
Oh, compared to Spider-Man 3, this is a massive improvement, all the way around. I honestly think Spider-Man 3 is too trashed upon. I mean, it's not as bad as everyone thinks it is. Sorry, but I'm not going to share that opinion that it's the worst superhero movie ever. I mean, just go and watch Fan 4 stick or something. I mean, there's some really bad movies out there. But like, yeah, I mean, this is an improvement, but just because it's an improvement doesn't necessarily mean that like the movie itself is good. I think Venom as a character in this movie worked really well, and even with the PG-13 rating, like, yeah, there's some scenes where you're like, oh, this would have worked really well with an R rating, but at the same time, it's like, I'm glad we got anything, especially considering that when this movie first was getting like announced, they had just made their deal with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so seeing Sony take on their own project was like kind of weird.
Yeah, and this was like kind of like their unofficial start to like the Sony verse of, you know, Marvel heroes, because like they're doing this movie and then they announced they're doing another Venom, and then we also have Morbius, so like they're kind of doing their own thing, which is cool to see how they're expanding, but definitely not like hits across the board for all the characters. Like Venom's cool and everything, but I can't say the same for the villain, sadly, in the first one.
Man, I can barely even remember the villain, to be honest. That's how memorial he is.
Yes, he's essentially Silver Venom, but just angry, and it just doesn't, like, I don't really care, you know?
What I will give both this and the first movie credit for is they use their one F word really well in both movies.
Oh yeah, the second one was just glorious, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, before we move on to the second one, is there anything else you want to say about Venom 2018?
No. I think I've said all I can about that one. I mean, again, it's a okay movie, and so I don't really have much to say about it. You know, still sitting here a couple years later after the whole Sony pulling Spider-Man from the MCU thing, Venom 1 and Venom 2 is evidence that Sony could handle something like Spider-Man. It kind of goes to say why I don't think Sony really wants their rights like fully back for Spider-Man, because they're still not getting these movies perfect. Like, they're using a character that people know and like, but both movies have been trashed upon by critics, and just because you like the character doesn't necessarily mean you actually like the story they told. So I don't know. I still think Sony has a lot to learn on how to make these movies good.
Yeah, I definitely agree that like I definitely like the relationship between Venom and Eddie Brock, and at least Tom Hardy's performance, more so than I like the actual like story and the films that Sony is telling. But he's a cool character, and like there's a lot of potential there, and I think they're like tapping into, and kind of they're on their way to getting somewhere, as we've seen in the second one. But I'd really love for them to take that next step and really come into their own with these Venom movies. So yeah, moving on. That's the first Venom. You know, it's a good movie, solid-ish, but could be better.
Yeah,
I think that's the moral.
Deeply flawed is the way to put it. It's like a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, but it's not like absolute trash.
No, it is not.
It's not an Alien 3.
Yeah,
it's not an Alien 3.
Nothing should be an Alien 3.
But moving on to Venom 2, we're gonna keep it brief for now. Initial thoughts.
Better than the first one. Still not great, but the dynamic, I don't know. The dynamic between Venom and Tom Hardy's character, I mean, they were good. I think the relationship was actually better in the first one. I really liked Carnage. I thought he was really cool. But I think my biggest issue with this movie was actually the story it told. I don't know. I just wasn't hooked to it.
Yeah, to me too. Like, I wasn't like super gripped along with the ride and the story that they were trying to tell. Like, Carnage is good antagonist, and he's definitely better than the first one. Like, he's actually memorable and does cool stuff and looks cool. The secondary villain I didn't care about at all, and anything outside, I felt like, to me, like, there's a lot of Eddie and Venom stuff going on here, but there's also not a lot of Eddie and Venom stuff going on here. And when they're like not doing their thing, I'm just trying to keep it brief for now, it's just not that entertaining for me. And I felt like I could have used more Venom in this film.
You know, I think there's a lot of things hurting this movie, but we talked about the first one and like how it was kind of a drag. I feel like this one, if they had like explored the story they were trying to tell more, you know, maybe 20 extra minutes and delve deeper into some backstory or showing more of the character, I think it would have benefited this movie. There's a middle ground here where there's movies that are too short and it actually hurts it. There's movies that are too long where it drags on. And the first Venom, I feel, is too long, even though it only sits at like 90 minutes. If it was like 70 minutes and that first section was just like summed up in like 10-20 minutes, I think that movie would have been fantastic. Where this one, I feel like if it was longer and expanded what it was trying to tell, I think it would have worked better.
Yeah, I definitely feel like this one could have been like, I'd give it like a solid like 10 more minutes could have really helped this film out. Maybe it's out there, maybe it's not, but I think that would have helped it out. And to me, like, yes, they built upon the Eddie and the Venom relationship in this film, and I did like it and appreciate that, and a lot of the jokes hit for me as they did in the first one. But to me, I think it's part of that like surprise factor that I didn't expect it hit coming in with the first one, so I was pleasantly surprised. But now coming into the second one, I kind of had something to expect with the relationship, and it didn't like innovate or improve the same way that I hoped it to, and so it was kind of more of the same. So I think that's kind of why I have like a bittersweet taste in my mouth after this film.
Yeah, and we talked a few weeks ago about The Dark Knight and what made The Dark Knight good. And again, this is a sequel that I don't feel expanded upon its themes, used its first film as a jumping off point. I mean, the first one set up the second one like immediately in its post-credit scene. So we went into the second one knowing who the villain is, and it didn't really pull any twists that you like really didn't see coming. Like they pulled like generic like sequel twists, but like nothing that was like eye shocking or just completely was like, whoa, that was not what I expected at all. I feel like it took the same beat. I don't think the characters learned anything throughout the whole movie, and the ending was it was decent. A lot of CGI.
I mean, yeah, that's what you gotta expect out of these movies. Especially with the characters you're working with. It's not going to be like a Dark Knight super grounded approach. You're talking about two symbiotes that are like jelly liquidy creatures fighting each other. Like, of course there's going to be a lot of CGI, but yeah, like I felt like it didn't, like you said, build upon the first one that it wanted to. Like it was kind of very straightforward, not a lot of twists and turns. I want to talk about some interesting things that they do, choices they make with the movie more in depth when we get to spoilers. But like, let's just go over briefly some numbers first. Like this movie actually did pretty well despite us kind of trashing on it, right?
Yeah, for us, okay. I would like to reinterpret. We're not fully like trashing on it.
No, they're not terrible at all.
But like, I definitely wanted it to be better, especially having Woody Harrelson in it. I was like, oh, this could be really good. And I walked out, I was like, yeah, it was pretty good. Like, not great like I wanted it to be, but not terrible. But audiences seem to really enjoy it, or at least to a point. It made 90.1 million domestically this past weekend, which actually topped the first movie from 2018. So like this is one of the first like movies that topped its pre-COVID numbers, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. And I think it's a really fine step knowing that next week we're getting No Time to Die, and there's estimates that it might crack the 100 million barrier, which we haven't seen since Star Wars came out back in 2019. But overall, I heard audiences like the audience score is like 85% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, obviously there are people that liked it more than us.
Yeah, and I mean, that's perfectly fine. What we're talking about here is film. It's art. It's subjective. You're totally entitled to like it or not like it however much you want. And Anthony and I just happen to share a lot of the same opinions. That's kind of why we started this podcast in the first place. But yeah, doing really good. Best opening since 2019, which is kind of crazy. And hopefully, like you said with the Bond estimates, I don't think we're going to get those numbers with Dune by any means. But with Bond or maybe not Eternals because that's a new IP, but definitely with Bond and maybe with Spider-Man, we're going to start to see hopefully an increase in uptake in theater sales and, kind of like a return to somewhat normalcy in the future, hopefully.
No, I mean, don't let 90 million make you feel like it's a small number. Like this, the fact that it made more than the first one, I think Sony is super duper happy with these numbers. And if we were ever like, if this movie had tanked, I could absolutely see Spider-Man getting delayed. But this goes to prove that for the right movie, people will come back out to the theaters. And I think Spider-Man is going to absolutely just stick with its December release date now, and it's not going to move again.
Yeah, I think that, like, my point was not like I don't know if the audience is there. I think is, like I was saying, it's more dependent on the film. Like, I think Dune is not going to hit those numbers, but Spider-Man definitely will.
And I think I understand where you're coming with Dune. I also think it's going to struggle because of its HBO Max day and date.
Yeah,
and I think Venom 2 definitely benefits from being a theater-only release for now.
100%. So now we got that out of the way. Let's get deep into Venom, Let There Be Carnage, which they actually say in the film.
I'm sorry. That was like, they said it and I kind of cringed.
It's kind of cringy.
Whenever
you do that in a movie, you're just like, it's just, you kind of wink to the audience and you're just like, okay.
I understand where the title is like kind of generic and it works, but like Venom Let There Be Carnage is just such a weird title to begin with.
Say.
So the fact that they also used that line in the movie is just weird. Like, when they first announced Venom 2, I was not expecting it to be called Let There Be Carnage. It was just a really weird title.
Yeah. Like, for example, like, I rewatched Spectre last night, and like when they say Spectre, like the whole, like, the music hits and it's all like dramatic for a second. I'm just like, okay, you just said the title of the movie. Okay.
See, but I feel like that doesn't, like, I don't feel like that's as weird as.
No, it's definitely more natural to say Spectre than to be like, Let There Be Carnage. I was like, okay.
Right.
But speaking of Carnage, I thought it was good. It wasn't great. Woody Harrelson, I'm sure he has fun with the role. A very out there character, cool design both for Cletus Cassidy and for Carnage. It's interesting because Venom has always fought somebody that's like way more powerful than him. And so it's always like interesting to see how he wins despite him being like the totally weaker guy.
Yeah, I think they executed in a really good way in that sense. Like, but that's going way deep into the movie. Let's start closer to the beginning. I wasn't expecting where they were going to start this off with, because really, I mean, yeah, they give us the backstory of Carnage and leading up to his execution, but they kind of like were like, let's mess with the relationship between Venom and Tom Hardy's character, and I'm like, I don't know. I think that was the first part of the movie that really just, I wasn't sold.
Yeah, where they're just like, they're kind of going through like a breakup.
Yeah, that would be the best way to describe it.
And it's like, cool. Like, I wanted to see them like get closer together. And I mean, yes, they hit that point by the end of the film, but there's like a huge part of this film where Venom and Eddie are separated. And that was probably like my least favorite part of the film. Yeah,
and the funny thing is that like with the runtime the way it is, like, Venom dips like, I don't know, probably 30-40 minutes into the film, and then he doesn't return until like, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes later. I mean, there's a huge chunk where he's not in it.
Yeah, and it just doesn't hit for me.
No, it didn't hit for me either. Like, there were some good moments in there, but I don't know. From a Venom sequel, I was wanting them to build more upon their relationship, and instead they tore the relationship apart in order to rebuild it later. But I wouldn't say it was rebuilt like super duper stronger than before. Like, it's better, but yeah, like, I don't know. In the first one, like, it felt like Eddie thought he was annoying, and in this one, like, yeah, he definitely thinks he's annoying. And even by the end, when they're together again, like, I don't feel like Eddie's like grown to him still. Like, I still feel like they're just bickering at each other and they haven't learned to be one.
Yeah, they're not like fully embracing of each other, and hopefully, I mean, we get that relationship fixed either in Venom 3 or in something else. But also moving forward, they kind of kept the girlfriend or ex-fiance storyline to a minimum, which I understood that's not where the story was going. Shout out Dan. The dude he's a way better boyfriend / fiance than he should be.
Honestly, Dan made this movie. Like, his character arc in this movie, fantastic. Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. 10 out of 10. Oscar-winning performance. Let's be real.
We love Dan on the podcast. And also, they did something weird with Venom that I totally didn't think you could do. Like, by the way, like the first movie gets set up as like so much like the symbiotes can go into these people, and they're not a match. And then it's pretty fast when they comes crashing down. But Venom is just like body jumping nonstop in this film and just hanging out in people's bodies for like a really long time. And it's just like whatever. And you're just like, okay, I didn't think you could do that.
Well, granted, the movie doesn't really establish how long he's inside of these people before they end up, the way they end up.
Yeah, it's like, what the hell?
Like, I felt like it, again, with how fast this movie was trying to run through its story, like, I never really got a sense of when things were taking place, because I think things were taking place concurrently, but, like, instead there seemed to be time gaps, but wasn't quite sure how long that time gap was. So, yeah, you're right. I have no idea how long it was taking, but in the first movie, for sure, like, people were just, like, instantly getting death handed to them.
Yeah, like it's like not a match. It's like you're done, so. But then he's chilling with this is Chen like for a while, and then I mean we already could tell he's kind of symbiotic with the girlfriend / fiance, like, but they just do that card again, and then he's just chilling at the rave for like a whole scene, and I'm like, that scene just did not hit for me. I don't know.
Really, that scene hit for me. I was like, you know what? The rest of this movie's been pretty meh. This is some pretty good stuff right here. I mean, it was cringy. It was really cringy, but like, yeah, it was hilarious. I loved it. I thought it was great. I'm
like, it's out there, so I respect it for being so out there, but it was just a little too cringy for me.
Now, the part where he rejoined with the girlfriend, that part was just like, I don't know. I felt like her plotline in the whole movie was kind of meh. Like, I felt like she was sidelined a lot, and then, like, they tried to make her important, and they're like, oh, wait, never mind, you're not the lead. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, like, there's, like, a whole storyline where it's, like, where they kind of set up, it's, like, Eddie's trying to get back with her, but they also kind of just, like, disregard it at times, too. And then they kind of push her out of the film, but then they're like, no, we need her as a damsel in distress to get Eddie back. And so it's a lot of back and forth with her character. I do think, like, the way that the story has gone, that she's kind of out of the picture, and I think I kind of want that moving forward.
Well, I think what they really could have done with this, because they showed her again with Venom attached to her, and I feel like the finale could have definitely used that. I feel like both movies, they kind of, didn't take advantage of that. Venom can be either one of them, like, can just morph into both of them. And so I would have really liked a dynamic where Venom's switching between the two. Yeah, as like a tactic situation where he's using one to get leverage and then switches to the other. Like, I think that would have been a really cool way to do a sequel to build upon it, but they didn't. She literally had Venom attached to her for, I don't know, 2 minutes, and then immediately went back to Eddie. I'm like, oh, okay, again.
Yeah, and like going to like how Venom is always fighting like stronger people, I guess like that's the way they compensate that for. I don't know if it's more of Venom's side or if it's more Eddie's side, but he kind of outsmarts them in a way. Like that's how he's able to beat them, which I mean is cool how they're doing that despite his like strength disadvantage.
Yeah. I don't have much to say to that.
I mean, that's like all he's got going for him too. Because I mean, especially going up against Carnage. I mean, that whole transformation scene was pretty cool to watch, and then the prison break. A lot of people also slamming this movie for the PG-13 rating. I don't really care. Like, would it be cool to see it R and extra blood and him to like eat people and stab people? Like, yeah, but like how much would that really add to the movie, like if we had the same story, like I don't think that would have saved this movie for me.
I don't think it would have saved it, but I was definitely sitting there and like I was kind of scratching my head. I'm like, holy crap, this is PG-13. Like it was dark.
Yeah, it still like pushes the boundary.
And yeah, like Venom or Carnage would like go for the head and then it would just like cut, and it was just like, I could not imagine being an 11-year-old being allowed to watch that. Like, I'm pretty sure my parents would have been like, no, I'm not taking you to see that.
Because, like, there's a way to approach the action for a really gory scene in a PG-13 movie. And I definitely think they took the right approach here as opposed to, like, an X-Men Apocalypse.
That just like stung me a little. I still remember that to this day, the Wolverine sequence, and I just laughed at how horrible that sequence was. It was so choppy, and every time he'd go in for a slash, there would just be blood on the wall, and I'm like, huh?
Yeah, or you just cut to like seeing the body just get thrown across and like, yeah. So they definitely do a better job here with Carnage than they did with Wolverine and Apocalypse. So I'm glad that that's there.
Yeah, there's times where I'm sitting there and I'm like, wow, this movie would feel complete if it was rated R. I don't think this movie would be any different rated R. I think it would just be more gory, and
yeah,
I don't think you need that, to be honest. If you're just being gory to be flashy, I don't know. There's just something about it where it's like, eh.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like, it wouldn't have changed the story and it wouldn't really improve my overall, like, thoughts and objective, like, feelings for the movie. But, like, then again, like, we had some cool action sequences with Carnage, but also at the same time, like, Carnage and Eddie really only, like, fight, like, once in this entire movie. And it's, like, the last fight.
Yeah, they, like, started this, like, dynamic between them, and then they kind of just backseated it because they wanted to focus on Cletus's storyline. And I don't know, I didn't really need that additional storyline. I would have rather seen a relationship between them and leading up to a big fight. But I feel like the big fight at the end just kind of just walked up. It just said, I'm here. And I was like, oh, there was like no lead, like there's no lead up, no build up. Like it kind of just happened.
Yeah, like they just really just kind of get all the pieces in place and just kind of hit execute. You know, I totally would have liked, like if Eddie had to visit there, like the prison when they were going to kill him. And like then he turns into Carnage, and then they get into like a little shuffle there, and then like kind of have to back out, and then kind of meet again for like a round two. I feel like something like that would have been more enjoyable.
I mean, I'll give the movie props, at least in the sense that it didn't take the conventional way I would see a movie like this going, where you'd have one battle and Eddie would lose the first battle, and then they'd go again and then Eddie would win. I mean, they kind of just skipped that part, and they just went, nah, the cops are going to take Eddie. That's your second act section. And then the third act, no, now he's going to fight Carnage. But like, I don't know. There wasn't, like, they had built up a relationship between Eddie and, Cletus before he became Carnage, but like, I don't know. There wasn't any dynamic between Carnage and Eddie. And so I felt like the fight...
Or Carnage and Venom, yeah.
Well, no, but like, it's not like Eddie really knew who Carnage was. Like, Venom knew. But like, there was no... I don't know. It was all kind of just thrown in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, the fight's like good. Like, it's got cool stuff. It's better than the first movie's end fight of, like, definitely. They got some cool, the way they used like the setting I think was cool, and Carnage got some really crazy abilities. And one thing I did like really appreciate that the film did is like how they show the dynamic between Eddie and Venom and how they're kind of symbiotic and respect each other. And then there's the relationship between Cletus and Carnage, which is very different, and I do like how there's that disparity there.
Yeah, I also appreciate it, but again, I felt like it was kind of just like put in there at the last second as a like an this, like, you don't, like, I don't know. I feel like Carnage was only in this movie for like, I don't know, 20 minutes. He really wasn't in it. And so you don't really get to, like, it felt like they were throwing exposition out instead of showing it. And I don't know. I didn't like that too much.
Yeah, it definitely would have been better if there was like other scenes or sequences when Carnage is doing stuff and Cletus and him kind of have like disagreements, but they kind of like brush it off until like this last fight with the involvement of like his girlfriend, where that like really kind of sets them to be like kind of separate entities. And speaking of the girlfriend, like I give zero craps about her character at all.
Yeah, she, like, if we're talking about, like, we've been talking about things getting thrown in, she felt like an afterthought. Like, they were like, wait, hold on. Carnage is already in the movie. We're only like 30 minutes in, and we need to at least be like 80 minutes long. All right, let's throw in a B plot line.
Yeah, and she's like only there for us to like kind of care about Carnage or Cletus, but it just doesn't. I don't care.
She's there because they gave her the ability to scream really loud, and that is the only reason she's there. If she didn't have an ability and all she was there for was Cletus, I think we'd literally be sitting there laughing about how dumb having her in the movie was. But at least in the sense of sound, like, it made sense for her to be there, right, but like it still felt thrown in.
One thing that is kind of getting overlooked, and they do talk about it, is that she has a mutation. So do you think that this is like a subtle introduction to like the mutant side of stuff into this comic book universe?
I'm gonna go with, only because it's a Sony movie, no.
Okay.
Because I think Sony wants to do their own thing, and while I think they're a-okay having their two universes, both like I think they're okay with Spider-Man being in the MCU and Tom Hardy's Venom being in his own universe, but I think if they were to merge the two, I don't think they'd want to use a term like a mutant, to be honest, because they don't technically own the rights.
That's true.
So I think it's more of a coincidental thing than anything else.
Yeah, that's fair. I haven't seen anybody really address it.
But while we're talking on this subject, because I felt like I was trying to play around it, let's talk about that really big spoiler, that post-credit scene.
Yeah, how every film ever is now in the MCU, in the MCU Multiverse, I should say. Technically, if you want to say it. It could be. They all could
That was crazy. I mean, I had been hearing all over Twitter, and pre-release I had been hearing things about the post-credit scene just being like just something else. And the moment the scene, the way it took place, I think for some people in my theater it took a moment, but the moment I saw on the television screen that Jameson was there, I'm like, okay, I think I know where this is going. And then, but it still like blew my mind seeing Tom Holland.
Yeah, I definitely noticed something because like the room changed, and I was like, oh no, they didn't do that. And then yeah, the news broadcast, and I was like, oh, they did that.
Yeah, actually, I think I noticed a news broadcast first before I noticed that the room. Like, I noticed the room had slightly changed, but
yeah,
it wasn't my full attention.
It is different. Yeah,
but I mean, I love the fact it's kind of like not No Way Home, Far From Home. The way that they did their post credit scene, I think they're really learning how to do these post credit scenes really well. Is that they leave it with like the door absolutely just wide open. They're like, "Yep, interpret it the way you want for now until we release a sequel," and it's like that's kind of cool because most MCU like post credit scenes are really not open ended. They're building up to something else. Where like Sony just like throws the door open. We're like, okay, we're not fully sure what we want to do yet, so we're gonna leave it like this so we have time to figure out what we want to do. And I think that's kind of cool because it feels kind of like an episodic like episode, like a TV show on its season finale, how it leaves the door open for the next season. Right. But if they're not, it's not fully revealed yet. So I really like the post-credit scene in this one.
Yeah, it definitely absolutely works. And I think that has to do a lot with how the audience is talking about it. That super high audience score. It's definitely, if this post-credit scene isn't there, it's definitely lower because you just end with that on that high of emotions and you just are thinking about all the possibilities. And, the way they leave it open is this means either we are seeing Venom in No Way Home or Spider-Man's going to be in Venom 3.
I'm gonna go with I'm gonna chip in here real fast. I'm going with the alternate one. I'm gonna go with that. That Spider-Man's gonna show up in Venom 3. I do not think Venom is going to show up in Far From Home, or sorry, No Way Home.
Really interesting.
I
think it would make more sense, and because Venom's kind of a good guy, but also that would be kind of weird. But I just think I've seen so many videos and people explaining like how it just kind of would make sense just to. Like it would be ambitious, but Civil War was ambitious, and all these other Avengers level movies have been ambitious. And could they do it? Could they put him in Far From Home? No Way Home. Those titles are so confusing. Could they put him in that? Yeah, they totally could. But I could also see him saving it for another movie.
I don't know the way that they're marketing No Way Home. The way that No Way Home, spoiler leakers, whatever. It already feels like a lot. I don't care if the runtime's 2.5 hours or 3 hours long. There becomes a point where it's like there's such thing as too much. And if rumors are to be believed that we have 3 Spider-Men and we have like 5 different villains showing up, I mean it's insane to think that
Spider-Men are like in there for like 40 minutes.
I mean. Again, it's crazy to even think that something like this, I don't know. It's like if the Spider-Man don't show up and really it is just a multiverse story and it's not setting up a Spider-Verse, then I could probably absolutely see Venom showing up, because then you're not having to tackle throwing in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. But
Yeah.
if they also show up and then you want to throw in Venom as well, I don't know. It just seems like a lot on top of the villains.
Yeah, it definitely is a lot. And it also gets me wondering, like, where Venom fits into that story, because he's a good guy. I'd say he's a good guy, you know? And so I think it would really undercut these two movies if they just threw him into with the Sinister Six and you had Venom take over Eddie and just be a full-on bad guy in the movie. I don't think I'd like that. And they have enough villains where I could also see Venom teaming up with the Spider-Man and helping out against the villains. And, you know, also because, you know, we got to sell toys, you got to think that Venom's going to separate and go to Peter for a little bit, and then he's going to go back to Eddie, and then we're going to get the classic suit with the white symbol on Venom, and now Venom will have webs because he takes that from Spider-Man. Like, you got to think that that's a merchandise move, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's totally possible. I don't know. It's really hard to, theorize this stuff. I mean, only really the executives know, and you don't want to speculate too hard because I feel like it ruins the experience if they don't go the route you speculate, which is why I try to mostly stay out of this type of thing, to be honest.
I will say though, MCU, at least the way they handle the stuff over there with the story, they're really good at having cameo characters. Like let's just talk about how they introduce Peter in Civil War. Like they have really good usage of using these big characters in small pieces of their puzzle. So if they find a cool way to include Venom, I think they could totally do that. And not only this, but with this whole taking Venom into the multiverse, or like we're assuming Venom's in a different dimension now, right? So they could have test ran Cletus Cassidy in this, and who knows, we could see Venom and Carnage again in a different Spider-Man movie moving forward. Who knows?
Oh wow, I didn't even consider that, but that would that's like really weird. I mean, we've seen reboots, but like to have the same villain, I don't know. Even if it was like 5 years from now, it's weird.
I guarantee it'd be a better version than this one, though. Like that's just how.
If you have the same team, though. If it's not done by the MCU and it's the same team that made this one, I don't know. The results might be the same.
That's true. Because, I mean, I don't think... I could see Tom Holland going for more than 3 movies. For sure.
Oh, absolutely. He still looks super duper young.
And they're already knocking out a lot of villains, so who are you going next? Like, they might come back to Carnage. Who knows,
yeah, maybe.
But, okay, so going back to Let There Be Carnage end fight, they cleverly used the girlfriends with the screams and the fire, and there was that cool scene how like Venom transferred between all the bodies in order to like fall safely. I thought that was really smart. And okay, was it me or did you get hella Amazing Spider-Man 2 vibes in that one scene when like he's hanging onto her on top and the bells like I was
that was the exact vibe I got, because wasn't she like falling and it was like almost shot like the exact same way that's when Stacy died in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Yeah. I'm like, yo.
And you're like looking into Venom's eyes and it's like the eyepiece of the spider scene. I'm like, no, I can't do it again.
Yeah, they were like, we're going to make you feel that Amazing Spider-Man 2 vibe to think she's going to die. Oh, yeah, we saved her. Let's go.
Yeah, we're different.
We're not that dark. As we killed like 50 people before this scene.
Yeah. And I don't know how Venom would have been able to like just outright beat Carnage. So we revert him back to symbiote form and he just eats him.
Yeah, that was not the way I expected the movie to end, but at the same time was probably only the logical way for it to end and not take like 6 hours, because they did seem very like eye to eye when it came to strength levels and their ability to fight each other. Like I felt like they were on the same level, and so I feel like the fight had to have some mysterious element in there to pretty much have the fight go in Venom's favor.
Yeah, and I don't know, like this is again more speculation, but do you think he's a little stronger or gets some more extra abilities now that he's eaten Carnage?
That's something I'd definitely be interested in seeing in a sequel. Like, did him eating Carnage? But I guess Carnage was always a part of him because that was how he was formed. So I'm gonna go with no. Yeah. But you're right; it could go anyway.
Yeah, and then we get the last confrontation between Eddie and Cletus, and it's kind of having this heartfelt moment. And Venom just drops one of the best F-bombs I've ever witnessed in cinema history and just says, F this guy, and just bites his head off.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to grow old of figuring out what the filmmaker is going to choose as their one F word, because a lot of movies nowadays decide to go with it. And some of them make the most classic lines. I mean, X-Men First Class, hands down, best use of it. All of the X-Men have great. All the young X-Men ones have great. Yeah, ones. but First Class just whole nother level.
Wait, what was First Class's?
Where they walk into the bar.
Where they what?
Where they walk into the bar to recruit
with Wolverine. Yes, that one was so good. And then, what was it? Was it Magneto or Charles that had the second one?
In Days of Future Past, Charles said it to Wolverine. He says,
"Oh yeah,
you told me this all these years ago, and now I'm going to say it back."
Okay, that one wasn't as good. The Apocalypse one, where he's like, "Who the F are you?"
Yeah,
Magneto. Oh, that one was good.
Mm-hmm. When Apocalypse shows up after his family's been killed.
Yeah. Those ones got good F-bombs, but this one was really good. This Venom one, I really liked it.
I love PG-13 movies' use of it because it's not like an R-rated movie where they have unlimited uses. They literally get one or two. I think I've one time heard three in a movie.
You're really clever. You're the Martian. You're the Martians used them in really clever ways.
I mean, if you don't say the full word, they're like, okay, you didn't fully say it. Yeah.
But yeah, overall, it was a fun time, I'd say. Wasn't the best time, wasn't the worst time. Slight improvement over the second one. Left the door open for the future.
It definitely left Spider-Man. The door open.
So I'm really excited to see where they go with that, either in a Venom 3 or in a No Way Home situation.
Yeah, I will definitely go and see a sequel. I mean, even though I will keep seeing these movies, even if they continue to get just absolutely trashed by critics. I will continue watching them. There's still, I don't walk out and go, that is 90 minutes. I won't get back. I go, yeah, that was pretty good. I don't know if I'm going to watch it again in theaters, but halfway
and then
decent.
we get nice treats in these post-credit scenes.
One last thing about that post-credit scene. This movie felt like Rogue One, where if you take one scene out, I feel like the perception of the movie would be absolutely altered. Just the way people would talk about it, the way people would remember it would just be completely different. If you didn't have that Vader scene in Rogue One, I think I still would have liked Rogue One. Someone like Daniel would have absolutely hated Rogue One.
I don't absolutely hate Rogue One.
You are not in love with that movie.
I'm just not a Rogue One lover. And if you didn't hear me talk about Rogue One, you can check out our very first episode of Timebreaker podcast to hear me talk not so greatly about Rogue One.
But yeah, this movie definitely, I think that is what most people are taking away. And while it's kind of a shame that that's the only thing I'm hearing about it, but sometimes that just happens in filmmaking.
Yep, you just you get that last punch, and that last punch sticks with you. So whatever you choose for that to be, that's what you get. And I mean, they happen to choose a very exciting last punch.
Yes, they did.
But that's going to do it for us. Talking about Venom. Decent franchise, lots of potential. Love to see where it's going from here. We've talked about some previous Marvel movies before in our last episodes. And we also talked about a bunch of spy movies for episode 007. All the Daniel Craig Bond films leading up to No Time to Die, which we will be talking about next week. So see you guys there. Peace out.
Yep. See ya.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Timebreaker Podcast.
If you did enjoy it, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe and make sure to ring that notification bell for new episodes every Wednesday.
See you next week.